What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the 2 Feet on the Ground Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris. Thank you for choosing to tune in today. Hey, folks, I don't know if you're listening on audio or if you're tuning in on YouTube, but if you're on YouTube, you're checking out some of my new stuff here. Got a new microphone, new headphones. I even have a legit podcasting mixing board over here. I am super excited. My buddy, Sean Shapiro, he's the voice of the Toronto Police Service, their TikTok channel, YouTube channel, all that stuff. Just a good dude. Him and I connected on social media, and he was the one that dialed me in on what gear was going to make the podcast sound even better. And Jaimie and I chewed on it for a little bit, and we thought, hey, we've been doing this a year now, and let's make the sound even better. So super pumped to be on this equipment for the first time. I'm also excited about today's guest. Today's guest is Mary Taylor. Mary and I were coworkers, we're partners in detectives back when I was a detective. Boy, it's been over 10 years ago, folks, that her and I were partners. She was a great police officer, great detective, moved on to being a mom. She talks about in the podcast of being just a mom, air quotes intended, and another mom telling her, hey, you're not just a mom. Being a mom is remarkable. And I would echo that. Jaimie is an amazing mom, but when she was a stay-at-home mom, she managed so much stuff for our family. And so Mary transitioned into that. And then somewhere in there, she decided to start a magazine, Tailored Living Magazine, a little play on her last name. And if you haven't checked out Tailored Living Magazine, you got to get on their website, Google search it. Their print magazine is just phenomenal. Just really great work that she does there. And she's just an absolute creative. And we got into a lot of great things about life, about leadership, about failing and being okay with that. So we're going to get into that here in just a second. But before we do that, I wanted to spotlight two different nonprofits, folks. You've heard me talk about Service Peace Warriors a bunch of times. Service Peace Warriors is a 501c3 nonprofit that's dedicated to our nation's veterans. They're raising all the money. They're equipping veterans that are suffering from either post-traumatic stress disorder or other war-related injuries. They're equipping them with service animals, and they're taking care of all the costs. So if you haven't checked them out, check out servicepeacewarriors.org. I also wanted to spotlight 484hero.com. 484 was founded by a friend of mine, Sierra, and Sierra's husband was murdered in the line of duty as a police officer. And Sierra and Daniel and Jaimie and I were friends in Everett when I was a police officer over on the west side of the state, and when he was still in the Navy, and then he went on to become a police officer for Pierce County Sheriff's Office. And just a great family. And the stuff that Sierra has been doing and aims to continue to do through 484 Hero is remarkable work. Check out their website, 484hero.com. Learn about it today. With that, folks, let's get into my interview with Mary Taylor. Mary Taylor, welcome to the Gravity Podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, this has actually been something I've been thinking about for a while. When I was kicking off the whole idea of gravity, I remember you were gracious enough to connect with me on the phone to talk about branding and some other stuff. So I appreciate you and just watching what you're doing with your business. And I want to get into that here in a second. But first, if you could just introduce yourself to the listeners.
Well, my name is Mary Taylor. I used to be a police officer with the Kennewick Police Department, and I became a stay-at-home mom. And then I kind of evolved into owning my own lifestyle publication for the Tri-Cities and the surrounding areas. And then that involved into a women-focused co-working space. So who I am is constantly changing and growing.
And I love the name of your magazine, Tailored Living Magazine. How did you arrive at that? Like, what was the inspiration that led you to starting? I mean, it's 2020, or at the time it was 2017. Am I correct?
Yes.
It's 2017, and there's a lot of content creators that are moving away from a print a publication and you're moving to one. So what was the inspiration in that?
Well, the name Tailored, actually, it's a little kitschy. It comes from my last name, which is Mary Taylor. But it also goes with the fact that the lifestyle publication is really tailored towards my readers and what's relevant to them. Just general lifestyle publications can encompass such a broad variety of topics. And it's really important for me that the publication is inclusive and that we involve as many people within the community as possible. So we do really try to tailor the content to what our readers want to see.
Yeah, and what is that demographic? What do you know what kind of your target demographic is, the folks that are picking up the magazine?
Me. Between 35 to 55, 60-year-olds, women who are ambitious, passionate, they have multiple interests, and that align with my values. So, empathy, connection, community, things like that. So that's my demographic.
Yeah, everything you do is just, I mean, and I know it's hard sometimes to hear this, but you just knock stuff out of the park. The quality of your magazine is 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 nothing but the best. I mean, high quality photos, high quality editing. It just looks good. And I'm speaking about this as a guy, right? But I mean, as a guy, when I open up Tailored Living magazine, I mean, it's inviting. It draws you in. If I remember correctly, a lot of times you'll spotlight a person or a family. There's just there's community events sometimes in there. There's just a lot of stuff that draws in the reader. What does it look like? What does your team look like at Tailored Living magazine?
Well, up until the last issue, I was the editor. And throughout the process, I had my hands in a little bit of everything. When I first started the publication, I had no clue what I was doing. I, I
You
didn't
were doing
know.
a good job of pretending then, because it
I,
looked
I
like
didn't know how much a piece of paper cost. I didn't know how much it would cost to circulate and distribute it. I had no clue. All I knew was that uh, I needed the magazine personally. The magazine becoming what it is today was a complete accident, because originally I started the magazine to try and learn new skills so that I could be marketable in the workforce and that somebody would hire me. Because prior to the magazine, the only experience I had was law enforcement, and I wasn't in law enforcement anymore. And so I needed to kind of just reinvent myself. I needed to establish new human capital. And I am not an academic person. I've never done well in a school setting. And so I just decided, why not teach myself and kind of learn as I go? And I did that because when I left law enforcement, and I know I'm going on a segue, I guess we're going to do this a couple of times throughout this interview, but when I left law enforcement, I lost my community. I lost everybody that I would go and see every day and have coffee with, and would come over to the house. And I had my, at the time, 9-month-old baby boy and my Jaimie, my husband. And that was it. And he's law enforcement. So he would go and do work, and he would maintain all the friendships and the connections that I used to have. And then he would come home, and that's what I had. I had no family here or anything like that. And at the time, there was no publication or outlet or resource for me to look at and feel like either A, I was seen, or two, I belonged to something like bigger than myself, which was something that I needed. I needed that purpose. And so I just decided, all right, I'm going to bring people together, and I'm going to create this magazine, and I'm going to learn things as I go. And then it'll get to the point where I can use this to get a job somewhere else. And lo and behold, this became my job.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Hey, if you don't mind, let's jump on that segue. Let's take that path back to law enforcement. What brought you to Tri-Cities, Washington, to Kennewick to become a police officer?
Yeah, I had been testing for law enforcement for about a year. It's a long process. You've got to go through the physical, you've got to go through oral boards, chief's interviews. It took me about a year of testing with different police departments. And at the time, my brother was a Benton County deputy, and he told me that Kennewick was hiring, and they're a great city to work for. And so I applied, and it was it was a, it was meant to be. It was one of those things that just was meant to be. And so I went through the entire process. I was hired, and I moved to Kennewick in 2006, and I've never looked back. I absolutely love the Tri-Cities, and I love the people here, and I love the police department. My husband still works for the Kennewick Police Department. So that's how I got here.
I didn't prep you for this. Any favorite memories of that season of life? I like that word seasons, just because it kind of prepares us to recognize that there's natural beginnings and endings to different parts of our life. And you lived that as a police officer and then moved into being successful in this magazine. But for the policing thing, were there some of those favorite memories that you had of being a cop?
I have some memories that stand out the most. They aren't necessarily great memories. They aren't necessarily like, I have some favorable memories, but going to police academy in Des Moines and growing up, I became a police officer at 23. And I want to say I bought my house, my very first house at 25 because of the career that I had, the stability, the security, and I was able to do that. So I think that in all, just the growing up process, those were my favorite memories. The moments where I matured and I saw, okay, I'm not the same Mary that I was before I came here because of this, because of this. So it's a general answer to your question.
No, it's a good general answer. It's, law enforcement, it causes you to grow up, right? I mean, you're getting exposed to loss and trauma and true conflict at a rate that most humans don't experience unless they're living in that, right? I mean,
I grew up in a bubble. My parents were married, are married. They've been married for 50 years. I'm the youngest of 8. They were college professors. I never saw the hardship and the bad stuff. It wasn't put in front of my face. And so because I didn't see it, it didn't really register in my mind that it was real. I mean, yes, you hear about it, but you don't really, really get it until you're dealing with it. And so, there were a lot of times where I just couldn't connect with members of my family because they had never seen it. And so that was why the law enforcement community was so important and special to me, because I was able to connect with people that actually understood what it was that I was talking about. So, yeah.
What did that contrast do for you? Again, your parents modeled from what you just described, a stable home, healthy relationship, right? And then you're 23, and now you're working as a police officer where you're going into people's homes, and you're probably having to engage folks that are your parents' age or older and try to help them fix their conflict for the night. What did the contrast do for you? I feel like so much of life is about perspective, and now you had these two just drastically different perspectives from healthy home and marriage that your parents modeled versus what you're seeing as a police officer.
I think it lit a fire in my belly to become the best problem solver that I had ever been, to find creative ways and creative solutions to fix things that no one can prepare you for. You show up and you have all of these variables. You have no clue what you're going to be handed. And then in that moment, you need to figure out a way to put a Band-Aid on it and fix it. And I thrived in that environment. I thrive in life experiences and in life settings. I did not thrive in an academic environment where I was sitting in a class and it was very analytical. And law enforcement gave me that outlet. It gave me the ability to pour into the things that I was really good at. And so it was a good fit for me.
Yeah. And you were a problem solver.
Me. Yeah, it completed me. It made me feel like I had purpose. And in turn, that is what I, at the time, established my human capital as. I became a law enforcement officer. That's who I was. And it took many, many years to get to the point now where I realize that I am not what I do. I am what my values are. And that in itself is probably another story for another day.
Yeah. Well, that's powerful, right? Because again, if we look at life in the terms of seasons, here's the deal. No one's going to do unless they die doing the job, you're not going to do your thing for the rest of your life. You're going to do it for a bit and maybe for a long bit. There's folks that have served in one profession or one industry for decades. But the reality is when you identify with those core values, that's stuff that can carry you from one season to the next. Yeah.
It was interesting when I left. So I was a detective at the time. I kind of specialized in the area of people crimes, crimes against people, and I became really efficient and really good. And I'm super proud of it. And I say it to this day that I did a really good job of investigating crimes against children. And here I was, and in fact, I remember an instance with you when I was pregnant. I was 7 months pregnant with my belly, and we were trying to arrest somebody, and I ended up getting like kicked in the belly. Cohen ended up I gave birth to Cohen a little prematurely, probably because of the stress. But you guys up in the office were joking around that my water was going to break while I was sitting at the desk because I mean I was at where I was supposed to be, but when I left law enforcement, I lost that capital that I had. And I became just a mom. Because it was funny. So I was dealing with crimes against children while I hired a nanny to take care of my 9-month-old. And it got to a point where my 9-month-old had a medical checkup, and I was supposed to go to the medical checkup, but I missed it because I was dealing with another baby with another family. And I had this innate pull to do what it was that I thought I was meant to do, and then to do this new life being a mom. And I was in inner turmoil for quite some time. And I sat down with my sergeant and I said, I can't give you everything that it is that I used to give. And I can't give my son everything it is that I want to give him. Something has to go. And at the time, Jaimie was doing really well. He was on the SWAT team. So he and I had a conversation. I was like, look, I am going to stop what I'm doing. You go and take this as far as you can. You do as much as you can. You do as good as you can. And I will take care of the house and the kids and the kid at the time. And so I left law enforcement and I became, quote unquote, just a mom. And I will remember the day like it was yesterday when I told another mother that I was just a mom, and she about backhanded me because she was like, you are not just a mom. Yeah. You are not just a mom. Don't ever say that again. And so I realized my misstep because one, I am very lucky to be a mom, but two, I am more than just that. And it was kind of that moment where it inspired me to start finding out what my new capital was, my new human capital was, because I wasn't just a mom. What else was I? And so it's been a educational experience ever since then, just trying to figure out who I am.
Hey, if you don't mind, here on the podcast, Jaimie and I do the Marriage Monday edition a couple times a month. And so we really like to unpack relationship with spouses of how do we talk about tough things. And I don't know, maybe this was a really easy conversation for you and Jeremy. Maybe you guys talked about it and was like, easy, yeah, let's do this. Or maybe it wasn't. What did that look like, and how did you guys approach that subject?
It was more important that the conversation I had with myself first.
Yeah.
That it was something that I was resolved with. I knew in my heart that this is what had to be done. And yeah, it was a difficult conversation because there are a bunch of variables that come with it. We're going from a dual income family to a single income family and all of those other things, which those are things that you can figure out together, right? But that main decision, that was my decision to make. It wasn't his. We're married, we're in this partnership, but that was my decision. And he trusts me and I trust him. So there is that trust that I am making the best decision for our family. And so there's kind of some faith there that goes with it. And then we just kind of take it as we go.
Yeah, I like it. But the communication is key, right? I like how you
Right.
said you had to have it with yourself first. You had to sit there and really resolve this in your mind, and then you have to communicate with your partner. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. I joined the SWAT team without talking to Jaimie. We're laying in bed one night, and I'm like, "Hey, there's this opening coming up. I'm thinking about putting in my name." And she's kind of quiet for a second. I'm like, "Hey, babe, don't say anything. I just want you to think about it." She goes, "Oh, I can do that." And then the next day, I come home and I'm like, "Yeah, I signed up for the test." And she goes, "I thought we were gonna." And I went, "We did talk about it. We talked about it last night." She goes, "You told me not to say anything." And I was like, "Dang it, I failed at communication there, right?" Because having the dialogue back and forth and allowing our spouses to speak into these decisions we make is so powerful, I think. And just hearing your reason, your why behind it, right? Because I mean, that's what I heard you just describe is you had a why behind this. This wasn't just some random thought. You felt this dichotomy of of I'm out here taking care of other people's family by protecting kids, by investigating crimes against kids, but I'm feeling like I'm not taking care of mine in the way that I want to. And again, I think everything you do, you don't just like, yeah, I'm going to do this a little bit. No, when you do things, Mary, you want to knock it out of the park. And so that's the way you approach life and family and just everything I've seen you do.
It's one of my values.
Yeah. Hey, I got to say this though, too, because going into this podcast, I'm sitting there just thinking about you and I worked together in detectives for a bit. And my favorite, probably one of my favorite times being in plain clothes was you and me, along with the entire detective division, working an extortion case and us being in the mall with you, very pregnant. And you and I were posing as the happy couple just shopping. We bought a pair of jeans that day. I wore that pair of jeans for like a decade from Old Navy. They were great. But it was a very fun memory of working in detectives with you. And another thing is, you talked about the quality of work that you produced. I can speak about this from experiencing it. You are, but as a detective, you were a hard worker. I remember you coming upstairs and just taking on, if you weren't doing something, you were checking in with other detectives. How can I help you with your investigations? And I think that's critical in any team.
I think that I have been placed here to make an impact, whether it is with my community, with my family, with my team, with whoever I'm working with. Um, it's important for me to make things and leave things better than it was when I first got there. And so
Yeah.
checking in with other people and saying, how can I help? Or what can I do? That's important to me.
Yeah. Hey, let's fast forward. Let's get into the magazine now. Your title is Chief Visionary Officer. What does that mean? There's so many different titles out there from Chief Operating Officer, Chief Executive Officer. What do you do for Tailored Living Magazine as that Chief Visionary Officer?
I like the title visionary because it started as a vision. And the vision continually morphs, and I am guiding it with gentle hands in the direction that I want it to go. And I am the CVO, and I will always be the CVO of this independent publication. As my team grows, so we have a new editor, Brittany Archibald. And we have new team members. As the visionary, I feel like it is the most important thing that I can do for not only the publication, but for my team is to establish and enforce the vision that I have and to get buy-in from my team, make them understand what that vision is and do they truly live by it and buy into it. And so that's why I call myself a CVO.
And you are visionary in the midst of, well, and you didn't know this was coming on, but COVID comes up, right? And you're creating this co-work space, tailored co-work, and then COVID happens, and you have a storefront now. It's not just you doing a magazine out of your home. Now you have this business front. What was that like?
It's probably one of the biggest life lessons that I've ever learned. And I will constantly and always refer back to the day that I signed the lease. 5-year lease and a personal guarantee. No one knows what tomorrow's going to bring.
Yeah.
And you are a fool if you think that you can guess it or control it. You are a fool. And what I knew when I signed the lease was that I'm in it to win it. I'm all in. This magazine is all in. We're not giving up. We're going to fight. We're going to put our head down. We're going to grind. And there were other women who had similar passions and ambitions, but they had no place to go to, explore them and pursue them. And so tailored co-work, throughout the life of the magazine, we've done a ton of interviews. Like every issue, we highlight a local nonprofit. Every issue, our readers choose a favorite female founder. So somebody in the Tri-Cities who is female, who is just doing their thing and making a great impact on the community. We have had so many great interviews and met so many great women that the female-focused co-working space, the women-focused co-working space, just kind of, it took life because there was nothing like that here in the Tri-Cities for women. So I had this huge space and I didn't need all of it for just the magazine, and I opened it up for other women to pursue their careers, passions, and that's where we went.
So what does the co-working space offer for women that need, that they have a profession, they have a hobby, they have whatever, right? But they need something other than the dining room table to be able to spread some stuff out and do their work. So what does it look like?
It's clean. You don't have to worry about cleaning anything or picking anything up. The refrigerator and snacks are stocked, so you can feed yourself if you need to. It's pretty. It's a creative environment. There's color. It is quiet. I'm literally looking out at the co-working space because I'm in a booth right now to do this interview. But I think the most important thing is you are surrounded by other women in parallel times of their life that maybe in completely different careers, but they have similar ambitions. And so you're kind of surrounding yourself with a tribe of people. When you come in the door, this is where you get work done. This is where you come up with new ideas. And you kind of get inspired by the people around you that are doing great things. And even though somebody could be in a completely different career, maybe they're giving you ideas on branding or on marketing or on how you're going to reach a demographic that you've never even thought about before. The magic happens when like-minded people come together, and it happens in the break room. It happens in one of the biggest downfalls of COVID and working from home is you lose that opportunity to connect with somebody that's other than yourself in those random passing moments. You're walking down the hallway, or you're sitting around the copy machine, and you're cracking jokes. That's where the magic happens. And if you don't have a place to do that, you kind of lose that. And the team here and the members here they've become a part of my extended family.
Yeah. How has that impacted you? You've mentioned this now a couple times. You haven't said it directly, but connection, both the people you're spotlighting in Tailored Living magazine and then in Tailored Cowork. How is this impacting you both for the magazine, but then just you as a woman? How is this impacting your life?
That's a good question. It gives me purpose. It gives me the purpose that I lost when I was a police officer. Connection is important to me, but it's not just community is important, connection is important, but I think the word community is overused and misunderstood. I think by default, because you live in Tri-Cities, you are a part of the community. But what does that mean? Do you feel like you're actually a part of it? I live in Maine. I'm a part of the Maine community. But do you know anybody there? Do you know any businesses there? If you walk into a grocery store, do people know your name? It's like Cheers, where you go where everybody knows your name. That's community to me. And in this day and age of social media and profiles and talking to people online and not in real life, IRL, we've completely lost the concept of what community is. And so for me, connection, it's the connections that you make create your community. And so the magazine, it's important to me that, one, the magazine is inclusive. I don't want to alienate anybody. I want you to flip the page, be entertained, be engaged, be educated. But I also want you to flip the page and see Angela Johnson, our favorite female founder, and what she does. And if you want to go see her, this is where you can go check her out. This is her work. And then you see her in the grocery store and you're like, hey, Angela. And Angela's like, do I know you? And you're like, yeah, I saw you in the magazine. And it sparks that connection, which then in turn builds your community, right? So it's important for me to, one, build my own community, right? But two, I also want to help facilitate others so that if they're feeling alone or if they're feeling like they aren't a part of something bigger than themselves, I want them to pick up the publication and say, hey, I'm a part of this community. And I'm going to connect with XYZ and I'm going to make my community bigger. So that is one of my values and I live by it. And so we bring that into the magazine.
Yeah. You know, one thing I've found is sometimes it's hard to connect though. Right? Especially over the last couple of years, everything's been so polarizing. Like you have to pick, you have to be left, you have to be right, you have to identify with a religion. You have to, like, people want you to say which side you're on so they can figure out whether you're friend or foe, instead of, hey, we can disagree. We don't have to completely, because we're human beings, because we're moms, we're dads, we're husbands, we're wives, we're girlfriends, boyfriends, we're all these different roles. And can't we land on that? With your husband still being in law enforcement, have you found any of that where you're connecting with people and again, hopefully this is good, but then it's not good because of just polarizing this or that? I don't know. Has that been complicated at all?
Connection and community are different from cliques. You don't all have to drink the Kool-Aid to be a part of something bigger than yourself. You don't all have to think the same way. In fact, if you all think the same way, do the same thing, you're a clique.
Yeah.
I don't really subscribe to that philosophy. I never have. And I think that I have isolated myself or insulated myself in a way, so that I don't have to deal with that kind of temperament or mentality. I don't think that that's a growth mindset. I don't think that people who think you have to think this way or this way, I think that they are stagnant and maybe they're plateaued, reached their full potential, but they aren't continuing to grow. And that's not what I subscribe to. So I wouldn't bring them in as family, but I still can listen to them and let them feel like they're being heard. I don't have to
Absolutely.
agree with them, but you know, we can still have a friendly conversation and dialogue.
Yeah. Hey, through all of this, health is important. What do you do to keep perspective when it comes to just taking care of yourself and the way you and your family takes care of each other? What do you do so that you can, because some of these things that you're saying come from a healthy mindset, I believe, and so we have to invest in ourselves and encourage our family to invest in themselves in order to be able to process things the way you're processing them, I think. So what do you do? What does your family do to keep that healthy mindset?
Okay, so I was watching a TEDx talk. I can't remember who it was. I love TEDx podcasts, by the way.
Yeah, same.
Um, and there was a lady that discussed, she does not use the term crazy or chaos. She was an ER doctor. And the reason why she didn't use that was because she is not, she doesn't subscribe to that idea. She believes in triage and priorities. So for me and my family, in order to feel like I have control over things, I triage. Um, I have a very, very small circle. In fact, I call it a triangle. So I have myself and my health, I have my family, and then I have my career, my businesses. And that is my triangle. And then within that, I have a very, very, very small inner circle that I keep near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Everything else is outside. And when I decided that that was kind of the route that I was going to take moving forward, man, all that little stuff just started to disappear. All of those little things that just, would get to me, or that I'd like to think that I'm perfect, but I want to say I have high functioning anxiety, and I worry about a lot of stuff. And so when I came to the conclusion that I'm just going to make my circle really, really small, and it's got to be within these boundaries for me to even care or have to be able to focus or ruminate on it, um, that helped me out a ton. I think it also helps my boys out too, because they see, okay, this is important, so mom's taking care of it. This isn't important, so it's a lower priority. We do this with their homework. We do this with their obligations. We do this. It's one of those things that I try to instill in them. I also honor our private moments as a family. Those are sacred. I share a lot on social media. I do. Usually it's about myself. Sometimes it's about the family and the kids. Very rarely do I bring in my husband. But the really, really important stuff, the sacred stuff, I keep very close to my heart. Just like in business too, the really important stuff, nobody needs to know about it until it happens. Keep your head down, focus on your objective, and your work will speak for itself. So, and that's in business life. Well, in family life, it's the same thing. Keep your head down, pour into your family and yourself, and then your relationship will speak for itself. So that's how I keep things healthy and moving around. And that's my perspective now. But who knows? Maybe in a year it'll change and I'll be enlightened with something new. But that's where I'm at right now.
Well, and so it does, right? Because again, as we go through different seasons, there's different priorities. And right now, with a family, setting great relationship boundaries, that's what I heard you talking about, at least in the vocabulary that I use. Setting those
Mm-hmm.
boundaries to where you're open to all, you're willing to have a good conversation with anyone, regardless of their thoughts. But when it comes to that inner circle or that triangle of area that you're gonna allow yourself to stress more over. I don't know, stress isn't the right word, but just to care about, right? The stuff that you have control over. Because here's the thing. most of the stuff that people, nah, that sounds like I'm being judgy. Most of the stuff that I sometimes want to get concerned over and have anxiety over is stuff I don't have control over. It's
Right.
just stuff that's outside of my control. And so I got to take a deep breath and I got to refocus on what do I actually have control over? I have control over my attitude, right? I have
And,
control over what I do right now.
yeah. And there's only so much of me to go around. And like what we had talked about earlier, I give my all in things that I do because that's who I am. If my name is going on it, you better believe that I'm putting out the best that I can at the time that I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And so if there's only so much of me to go around and I have a huge circle, I'm gypping not only myself, but I'm gypping everybody around me that I make false promises to, or, you know, I have weak relationships with. And that it doesn't speak to my values. So out the door it goes.
Do you have stated values? You've said we've come back to that a number of times. Do you have like a set of 3, 4, 5 like core values that are at your core, or is it something different?
Yeah, I empathy. Empathy is very, that's a core belief. That's a core value.
Yeah.
Passion.
Hmm.
I'm passionate. Don't get me hot. If I get mad over something, my kids will know it. My husband will know it because I will speak my mind. Um, Ambition and drive. I'm capable. I can do things. When I was a kid, I was always looking to somebody else. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? And then there came a time when I needed to draw a line and say, no, I can do this. I was born with, I have everything that I need within me. So I can do this. And I'm loyal to a fault, which is why, again, I have that very small circle triangle. And then, I guess just being a life learner, somebody who has a growth mindset and is always open to failing and trying again. Um, I'm not afraid of failure. And so those are values. And I think that, I mean, those are my values or what I consider values.
Yeah.
And
I think those are
I live
strong.
by those.
Hey, failure, that's a tough one, especially if you've experienced success throughout life. It's easy to get into a mindset of expecting perfection from yourself. Is that something that you had to learn? Is that something your parents instilled in you that it's okay to fail? What was that like for you?
I was the youngest of 8 growing up. And I was the flake. I have brothers and sisters that are academics, all sorts of, higher end careers, and I was the college dropout. And so growing up, I failed a lot, and I didn't follow through a lot, and so that was Mary. My parents kind of had this like she's gonna do what she's gonna do. My dad was very surprised when I actually graduated the police academy. I made it through, and because he didn't necessarily think, he had hoped that I would be able to make it through, but he didn't necessarily think that I would.
Yeah.
And that was the reputation that I gave myself because that's who I was, that's how I lived. And so it kind of is a two-part. It goes two ways because I failed a lot as a kid. I was never afraid of it. So now growing up, and leaving law enforcement and starting the magazine and the decisions that I make, success and failure isn't even registering. I'm not even thinking about if I'm going to succeed or if I'm going to fail. Am I capable? Can I do hard things? Can I do this? Yes, I can. Will I get
Yeah.
it right the first time? Probably not, and that's okay. But I will keep going until I do it. If I set my mind to it, I'll keep going until I do it. So the act of failing as much as I do is the reason why I've seen the success that I've had. But I also subscribe to the rule of 3. A third of your life is going to suck. It's not necessarily in this order, but a third of your life and your time on earth is going to just suck. Things are going to go wrong. Nothing's going to go right. It's going to be hard. But then you need to remember another third of your life is going to be so-so. It's not bad. It's not good. You're kind of just moving your way through, right? But you keep going. That's the point.
Yeah.
And then that last third, that is the third where everything that you went through, you see that light. You see that spark. You find success. You are great. You become successful. So, in law enforcement, and when I first started as a police officer, I sucked. And then I continued on. I didn't give up. I showed up every day, right? And then I became so-so, right? But then I kept going. And then I became a great detective, right? And then I became a mom. And I sucked at first. And I still probably am so. I still, it's the same thing though. It is what it is. It's the rule of 3. But the point is that you have to check in every day. As soon as you check out, you lose the chance for that last third to show and prove how great you are. And the problem is that most people think it is what it is, and that's the way it's always going to be. But that is not the case. It is what it is right now. You just haven't seen the other side yet. But you have to show up. You have to check in to get there. And it's the rule of 3. So that's kind of what I preach when I get a chance to talk to somebody and they're kind of stagnant and they're in their head thinking this is the way it is, this is the way it's always going to be, blah, blah, blah. It's just not the case. And so I try to let them know that.
That's a great mantra. It's a great mindset to get us through the storms that are inevitable in life, recognizing that this is temporary.
The seasons.
That greater things are going to come. Wow. Mary, you're motivating me in so many different ways. One thing I didn't even know that you were doing, or that Taylor Living was doing, was I saw that you guys recently launched a podcast.
Yes.
I love it.
We did.
What's your goal of, do you guys have like a goal of how many you're going to release a month or a year?
Let me tell you. So I at first did not want to do it. Wendy Spinelli is the magic behind it. She is my graphic designer. She is ambitious. And she's like, we need to have a podcast. We need to have a podcast. We sit down and we meet every Monday and we talk about like deliverables and things that we need to do. And she got on me for quite some time to start a podcast. And I was like, well, that's what we have a blog for. We have this publication and we've got so much content. We can't print everything. So you go to the blog and you can read behind the scenes and you can do all of this. And she's like, but that's not the same as talking to somebody. That's not the same as recording a live interview. And she won me over and she just took off with it. And I'm so proud of her. And it's one of those things where it's, again, I'm visionary, right? I'm the CVO and I'm trying to foster this team that is capable. And I mean, they're already all of these things, but now what I have to do is facilitate it and let them go and do their greatness. And boy, that's Wendy. She went and did it, and I'm so inspired by her. So you would have to interview her or ask her what her goals are for the podcast. I do know that we are in the process of shooting a few more interviews. She's in the process of shooting a few more interviews. We've had a couple of interviews. The Tiritas guys, Amy with Mira Gaston. Winery. We have a lot of food and wine. We're in wine country, Red Mountain, so we have quite a few, lots of content on that. But then, there's other stuff too. And it's all derived from the magazine, from the publication, and just another way, it's another platform for us to build that connection.
Yeah. I was enjoying listening to it. I was listening to I can't remember if they were 23 or 25-year-old winemakers, as in 25 years old.
Right.
And it was great listening to what got them started. And I like the way you guys put together the editing of it. It sounded good. I really enjoyed it. So
It's so funny. I showed up to the co-working space the following day after they had that interview, and there was a carpet on the table of our GSDs. It's the Get S Done suite that our members can reserve. And there was a carpet on the table. And I was like, why is there a carpet on the table? It's because they put the microphone on top of the carpet so that the echo wouldn't be crazy. And it's that learning curve where we'd never done a podcast. Wendy had never done a podcast before, but she's not afraid to fail. And so our first few episodes are a little rough, but they're fantastic because it's like it shows the possibility of what it's going to be. It's just not there yet. And so follow along because it is going to be a fun ride.
yeah, I have no doubt that you guys will make it great. The early part of podcasting, there's things that you don't realize the microphone's going to pick up. It just sounds a little bit different until you finish putting all this work into a hour interview, and then you go back and listen and realize I didn't hit this one button or something like that. And
Well, hopefully this one turns out for you. I really do hope so.
I think so. We worked through that in the pre-interview, and that was my fault in reference to turning on the right thing here on Restream. Hey, if folks want to learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to follow your work?
Well, we're on Instagram. So Tailored Living Magazine, and it's TAYLORED, Tailored Living Magazine. And I'm on LinkedIn, Mary Taylor. I'm also on Instagram, Miss Tailored, but that's very small. We have a website, tailoredlivingmagazine.com. And our co-work space has its own website. It's called tailoredco.work. So TAYLORED co.work.
I love it. And for the listeners, go ahead and look down in the show notes. All of those links will be down there, easy for you to click on. Mary, thank you so much. Time is my greatest commodity. I can't make more of this stuff. And you have given me a lot of yours, both when we were partners and detectives and now today on this interview. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. And it was good seeing you again. I missed that face.
Good seeing you.
All right, bye.
Bye. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, I am blown away by this opportunity that I get to interview just remarkable people. These ones are special when I reconnect with a friend that I just don't get to see often enough. And I just absolutely loved Mary's perspective on life, on leadership, on family, just on all of it. Just remarkable stuff. Check out her stuff down in the show notes. Hey folks, Jaimie and I want to hear from you. How are we doing here on the podcast? There's a couple different ways you can communicate back to us. First and foremost, you can rate and review us. If you're checking this out on Apple or on Spotify, on our main page, there's 5 stars waiting there for us. We'd really appreciate a 5-star rating. That will increase our viewability on those platforms. However, folks, they're your stars. And if we haven't earned 5 stars, instead, you should keep those stars. And maybe shoot me an email at chris@gravityct.com. Let us know how to make it better, maybe future Marriage Monday topics or guests for me to interview. Folks, we only get to live this life once. Let's go out and take care of the folks in our triangle or our tribe. Take care of each other. God bless.